Hi everyone, Epigenic here, with my first video in the Project OP series, where I'll be teaching you how to do the most damage possible for every encounter. In this video, I'll be explaining Zek'voz in Uldir, one of my favorite bosses. On the left, you'll see the talents you should use in this encounter. Below that are the Azerite traits that I recommend. For Shadow Priests in Uldir, you basically never want to use anything else but 2 Chorus of Insanity traits, combined with either Laser Matrix or Archive of the Titans to enable the Reorigination Ray. This is a specific buff that you can only get in the Uldir raid environment. You want to prioritize getting the haste version of this buff by having a higher haste rating on your gear than anything else. If you can choose between Laser Matrix or Archive of the Titans, I recommend Archive of the Titans. In the Zek'voz encounter, I'd say that there are 3 events that you want to master to maximize your possible damage. The first is optimizing movement during Surging Darkness. The second event is preparing for the adds to spawn. And the last event will be damage during Heroism and at what time you optimally want to make use of the Corruptus Pact debuff that you can get from standing in the orb. So let's start by looking at Surging Darkness. This AoE ability spawns 3 rings, where at every interval only one of these rings will be safe to stand. After exploding, the pattern will change. Now, something to be aware of in Mythic Zek'voz is that there is a rule in this order. The middle ring will always be safe first, and after every inner or outer safe ring, another middle ring will spawn. This allows us to do something pretty cool, and I'll try to explain with an example. As you can see in the clip, Surging Darkness is cast and the first safe spot is in the middle. Now here I position myself closest to either the outer or the inner circle. As such, I will always have 2 options available. I can either quickly move to the nearest safe spot in the duration of a normal global cooldown, or I can use Power with Shield to move myself to the other side during the duration of its global cooldown and can immediately start casting again. Subsequently, I make the same decision, and this time I can move in the global cooldown of my Void Bolt. This way we made the most use out of the 15-second duration of Surging Darkness and lost little to no DPS and can keep our Void Form rotation going. Now that the first Surging Darkness is over, this leads us right into the next event that I wanted to discuss, which is the adds that spawn. Notice that how in the log, the add spawns slightly after 1 minute and 3 minutes. By knowing the timer at which the adds spawn, we can use this to our advantage. We know that Dark Ascension is a very powerful tool to enhance our burst AoE, and it has a 1-minute cooldown. Now let's first quickly talk about the interaction between the Chorus of Insanity trait with Dark Ascension and Void Eruption. Now, Chorus of Insanity gives a buff after Void Form ends, where you get increased critical strike chance based on the duration of your previous Void Form. So let's say we had a Void Form of 26 stacks, that will make our Chorus of Insanity buff similarly have 26 stacks. Now, every second outside of Void Form, you will lose 1 stack of this buff and decrease the amount of crit it gives. And if you've re-entered Void Form and subsequently fall out of it immediately, you will lose the previous Chorus buff you might have had, except for one specific interaction. If you use Dark Ascension immediately after having cast Void Eruption, you will keep the Chorus of Insanity buff you had going. This allows us to have 2 eruptions that both benefit from the increased crit chance instead of just 1, increasing our damage massively on big groups. Now, as we are already trying to get 30-second cycles going for our Void Forms, you can see how much potential this can bring. In the clip, you can see me dropping out of Void Form just before the add spawn. I managed this by optimizing my movement during the previous Surging Darkness, giving me the perfect opportunity to allow for this timing. If I didn't move correctly or stopped casting completely during Surging Darkness, I would not have had the time to get another Void Form going. Or my Void Form would not have enough stacks the moment the adds would spawn, causing me to not drop out fast enough and subsequently not give me the time to reacquire enough Insanity to recast Void Eruption. When the adds spawn, I use Vampiric Touch on those that spawn further away and wait for the adds to be clumped up to use Dark Void. Immediately after that, I rush to 90 Insanity with Mindseer. As a result of this, I have almost every add dotted up, 90 Insanity to use a Void Eruption, my Dark Ascension is up because I didn't use it at the wrong time, and lastly I can use Void Eruption immediately followed by Dark Ascension, so don't use Void Bolt in the meantime, to have 2 Chorus buffed explosions, leading to a massive spike in damage. After this initial burst of AoE, make sure to have your dots still up on Zek'voz, and apply Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch to the nearest Void Weaver when Zek'voz is moving towards them. When the boss reaches phase 3, we can take a look at the last important event during the Zek'voz encounter, namely Heroism and Corruptus Pact. Contrary to popular belief, Shadow Priests are pretty powerful with the Corruptor buff that enhances your damage by 100%. It's certainly true that you will want to have Warlocks and Mages use their big cooldown with the Corruptor buff and Heroism all simultaneously. However, most classes will have used their big cooldowns during Heroism. In contrast, the inherent nature of Shadow Priest provides very constant damage. As such, we are amazing candidates to receive the buff at a time where all other classes have already used their big cooldowns. Luck would have it that this is usually at around the time where the boss will have 10% health remaining. Try to get the buff by standing in the orb at that time. This will massively increase your damage during the last portion of the encounter. Although this damage increase is certainly not needed to get above 95% parses, it will certainly make it easier. This brings us to the conclusion of this episode of Project OP. I hope you learned how to maximize your potential damage during the Zek'voz encounter. If there's anything I have not included that you would have liked to have seen, be sure to leave a comment so I can respond to you personally and incorporate the idea into the next episode. This was Epigenic, and thank you for watching Project OP.